cucumber when the cameras start rolling.
Cucumber apple actually, Paul. Yeah.
Whatever you like. Paul. Oh, he's looking at the.
Was that me? Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm sorry we are running over time. We've come to near the end of a long-running process around some improvements in New Brighton, as you have heard. So when we will need to finish no later than 25 past because we have a board meeting.
I've made more than one presentation to you just about stormwater management plans. This one's probably one of the more interesting and challenging of the plans, just because it has more constraints than most catchments. That's good, right? Cindy, advance the slide. I'm going to suggest there are probably three reasons why there are more difficulties in the Waitai Avon catchment. Now, first is the way the process came about. When the council applied for a renewal of its stormwater discharge consent, there was pretty robust discussions with Environment Canterbury about making a difference to stormwater quality. The council went to the consent hearing with a long list of stormwater treatment basins and wetlands. It must have been probably 40 or so-ish. And that was locked in consent conditions. And that list of basins moved across into the long-term plan and was provided for. And the council is building those basins and things. And they will achieve a certain amount. There's a lot more we could do, and there's a lot more many people would like us to do. But unfortunately, it's difficult. The relative timing between stormwater management plans, where we propose stuff, and the long-term plan, it's the timing doesn't work particularly well. And so we are more or less progressing with a list of things that is in a consent condition, and there's limited opportunity to consult on anything else. Can we have the next slide, please?
Yep.
Your clicker should be working now.
All right. And that's more or less what I told you. That's on the left-hand side of that screen there is more or less what I told you. What the Avon Stormwater Management Plan is going to do is it's going to build the basins, the facilities that were proposed and we're required to do by consent conditions. And in doing that, we'll meet contaminant reduction targets. And over the 10 years term of the SMP, we'll achieve about a 6%. We expect to achieve about a 6% reduction in annual contaminant load, possibly a bit more. Ideally, but not in this SMP, we would set more ambitious contaminant reduction targets, but that is going to await another long-term plan. SMP does try to demonstrate how stormwater quality will get better over time, and we're required to manage flood levels in the Waitai Avon River and on the floodplain. Yeah. Characteristics of this catchment, it's highly urbanised, so the stormwater is probably as much or more contaminated as it is in any other catchment, perhaps excepting the Heathcote catchment. Of older residential areas which have contaminating galvanised zinc roofs. There are industrial areas still, despite education, discharging industrial contaminants. And because the catchment's mostly developed, we have little room to build treatment basins and wetlands, which is the council's go-to way of, it's our standard, it's our usual way of dealing with both water quantity and water quality. So a lot of room in the upper Heathcote, in the Hallswell, in the Styx, Waitakere catchments, not so much in the Avon. The SMP deals with the usual range of urban contaminants. I'm sure I've presented to you on this before, the top wording, the orange. And it is going to deal with that by building biofilters, which are kind of they're large treatment facilities on the surface of the ground. They're filters, biofilters, so they contain sort of peat and bark and stuff like that. to treat Addington and Riccarton catchments. And I'll show you, there's a map in the next slide showing where those will be. And the Cranford Basin is going to be improved, retrofitted, reworked, so that it can capture and hold and treat stormwater from the Upper Dudley Creek, which is sort of Papanui West, and the Middle Dudley Creek, which is kind of Papanui East and Strawbins. This is an aspirational take. We would like to start doing stormwater infiltration into the ground around in the university area to offset intensification that is causing more stormwater runoff and less water going into the ground, feeding base flows. So the pink blobs beside that, up there in Cranford Basin are a representation of wetlands in Cranford Basin, treating the blue area to the left, and you can see a couple of circles. One in, well, let's deal with the easy one first. Treating Addington, it's situated in the old sale yards west of Deans Ave. Riccarton, there is a proposal to site a biofilter within Hagley Park, and that's obviously going to be subject to consultation and consenting. And so I don't suppose I can say that's absolutely guaranteed to proceed. This, how we get this, well, I'm not sure if you've seen this before, but this is a way for me to talk about things we might do if we could, but turn out to be rather difficult. The very top line is, historically we've dealt with our urban contaminants, which in the main are total suspended solids, sediment, and copper and zinc, using treatment basins. That's kind of an outdated way of dealing with things because they don't remove metals very effectively. And dissolved metals are perhaps the most toxic thing around for fish and the like. Normal practice now, the thing we usually do, we do in all our new developments, is we combine a basin and a wetland, and they particularly the wetland, has better processes for removing metals. Actually, very good at removing sediment as well. Things we would like to do are to retrofit devices like cartridge filters to do additional street sweeping. However, that will require funding that's going to have to compete with other discretionary funding in the long-term plan. You've probably heard that there's an anticipation that brake pads are going to, the copper content of brake pads is going to reduce, and we do see that happening overseas, and there's some evidence it's happening in New Zealand now. It's widely agreed that the best way of dealing with contaminants is to not introduce them into the stormwater stream, in other words, to deal with them at source. So if roofs are contaminating, it would be better to paint roofs or even have roofs or house claddings that are non-contaminating. However, that's it's not something the council can require people to do because it's still legal to put legal building materials on your house. So we are thinking about how, well, yes, we're taking legal advice and talking to MFE and ECAN and others about how to deal with the issue of dealing with contaminants at source.
Is it mostly from zinc galvanizing?
Galvanized roofs, particularly older and unpainted roofs, are very contaminating. But, well, tyres contain zinc, and which they discharge onto roads, and until somebody figures out a way of removing zinc from tyres, yeah, that's a pretty significant source of
the balance.
And our only way of dealing with it is to filter it out, filter the stormwater and filter that zinc out. And citywide, that's super expensive. In the interest of time, I'll just, yes, I would like to talk about flooding because, so the Otakaro, the river rises from the catchment, so it's not a huge river, but it is carrying now about as much as it can without causing flooding. Water can spill from tributaries in a bigger than 20-year return period event. And when it does that, it kind of runs over land, can run flood into properties, and can threaten buildings. Although in the main, buildings are situated high enough not to be flooded. I think you know that seawards from Fitzgerald Ave, well, the river's wide, it has plenty of capacity east of the city centre. Flooding, if there's any, is caused by tides, and the river's stop banked to keep the tide out of residential areas. This is a representation from our hydraulic model of what the orange is water, of course. Just a colour that happened to pop out. What the city might look like in a 50-year return period flood event. So you can see that just about every street's got quite a lot of water on it. That's absolutely normal because water's got nowhere to go really fast if it's raining very heavily. And you can see there are some places where water's going to accumulate. If any of you know Riccarton, there's a very scary big blob there, which is, the model shows as being held back by the rower line, the rower culvert. We've never seen that happen. We think it's an artifact of the model. So the model's being worked on to get something a bit more realistic there. If you live in that part of Riccarton, it's not quite as worrying as it looks. What I like to say, what this model shows, what I think is really interesting is that, so we've got three issues here. One is that when there's a large amount of rain, water's going to stay on the surface because it just can't get away fast enough. Secondly, the city is intensified. There's planning in place for the city to intensify within a couple of kilometres of the city centre because that's sufficient. We can use the same wastewater and water supply infrastructure and roads for a large number of people. However, the Avon River has reached the limit of the amount of water it can carry in the city centre, and that's determined by consent condition. Condition says we're not supposed to allow the river level, the water level, to rise more than 5 centimetres in a 50-year return period event, and we're pretty much there. So we're zoning to allow people to intensify and discharge more water in around about the middle of the city, but we're not allowed to, well, essentially we can't install bigger pipes to get it to the river because we're not allowed to let the river increase in its water level. So we have to start thinking about how to deal with, these competing issues. The council is starting to think about planning for, and in the engineer's opinion, is we're going to have to detain the water within the catchment back away from the river, probably by converting what is existing urban land, let's say, into detention areas. That's quite a big challenge for the city. You could imagine it's not an easy thing to conceptualize, and it's not going to be easy to achieve. But I think that's something it's useful to think about because that looks like, to me, what the future might look like for water quantity. It's quite normal for water to sit on the ground when rain falls. It's quite normal for it to tend to pond in hollows. The council deals with that by ensuring people have floor levels that are high. So when it rains a lot, roads carry water and it's inconvenient. Hopefully it doesn't flood people. But we do have to think about where we're heading in the future. So that's all I need to say. And maybe you'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes for questions. So Joe and then Tim.
Right, with the Avon, have you considered doing more dredging?
No point, because where we would dredge, the river's really wide, not super deep, but it's got tons of capacity east of Fitzgerald Ave. So, get the water to Fitzgerald Ave and it's away.
Okay, I was just talking to one of the guys about the stormwater down near Brighton Road last year when it was flooding, and he said, in his experience, he thought just dredging out to the estuary would help improve the flooding there.
Well, I won't contradict him. I think dredging is always a possibility. We do it from time to time because the river does accumulate sediment, and we will do it again. So I've got my answer. He's got his.
Yeah, okay.
Let's say the jury's out on this.
Oh, no, that's cool. Keep.
Tide, if you just, the tide just keeps pushing up there.
Yeah.
With the hole you dig, the more water's gonna come in.
Question I have is, what part of the city's allowed soak pits?
Yes, we've got a map, but it's that part in general, the places where there's infiltration capacity. So gravel's there, sand there.
Any further questions?
I just like to say, I wish we had more money to spend on it and not other things.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, Tim. I think we all over the country since 1989 have underinvested in all kinds of infrastructure. Celeste?
This might be outside of scope, but I just wondered if you had any comment on stop backs in the area, because that seemed too far outside of scope in terms of like future proofing them based on our current knowledge.
Yeah, I think we're onto that. So the stop banks are quite close to the river at the moment. They got damaged in the earthquakes. There is a plan, and it's well advanced, to shift them well back from the river and to incorporate them in the Otakarava River corridor and incorporate them with walkways and planting and wetlands and all sorts of stuff. So I would have thought you'd have been brief, but you'll be finding out about that. I think they're in good shape. As to future proofing, they'll be built wider than they need to be. I believe they're going to be built wider than they need to be and on solid foundations so they can be raised in the future with civil rises.
All right.
Oh, yeah, sorry, and the reason I asked that is because we're looking at reducing budget for maintaining them, so do you have any concerns about that?
Oh, well, I just can't comment because it's the first I've heard. But my thought was, apart from mowing, that possibly they need all that much maintenance once they're built. But anyway, that's just off the cuff. I'd be best really to leave that to someone else.
Right. Thank you very much, Paul, and for your time, and look forward to you next time. All right.
Excellent. Thank you.
We've got this done tomorrow.
We